This session is pretty interesting. I was asked to moderate the last minute. I was actually here looking at local companies to invest in, so they thought I might be able to bring sort of the American perspective of why this is. So this is a topic where we're going to look at really what makes Asian ventures attractive to U.S. and EU investors. So we're going to take a couple questions that I'll pose, and then we want to open it up to your questions. So with me are four people that I think are going to add a lot of value to this panel. We've got Deep Malhotra. Okay. He is from the managing partner of Gemini New Media Ventures. We got Satish Andra, okay, who is the venture partner for DFJ India. We have Shalice, who is a vice president from Sequoia Capital, and Pradeep Tagari, who's a director at Intel Capital, the venture capital group of Intel Corporation. So the actual topic of the session is what I want everybody to take a few minutes to answer. So what makes Asian ventures attractive to U.S. and EU investors? You want to start?
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think the simple one-word answer is just demographics. India and a couple of other large emerging markets are at a point in time in history where there's very many young people, which leads to good economic growth, which we believe will lead to many interesting companies and businesses being created over the next few years. And I don't think we can talk about many different facets of that, but kind of that drives whatever companies we invest in, drives returns and growth in those companies, and it should drive good returns for our investors over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So I think the way that our U.S. LPs and global LPs look at India is that if there's going to be 8 to 10% growth over the next many years, this will be a good place to allocate some capital to, just like they would to other interesting markets around the world.
Just to give you some background, Intel Capital invests in about 42 countries around the world, and this continues to be one of our favorite regions to invest in. There's a couple of things specifically around digital media that I think we are at an interesting time. If you look at the numbers today, in addition to the demographic data, if you look at the broad numbers today, if you look at the number of broadband users, depending on whose estimates you believe, anywhere from 4 to 8 million broadband users. Now with broadband wireless being deployed over the next 2 to 3 years, that number could jump up to 100 million. So at Intel, we have been championing this initiative that we are calling the 511 initiative, which is 500 million internet users, 100 million broadband users, and 100 million connected devices by 2014. And I think we're at a point where a lot of the policies, the technologies, the financials are falling into place to make that happen. And assume for a minute that happens, what sort of opportunities does that throw up? And that's why we are interested in this region. That's primarily, I think from a timing perspective, we are at the cusp of a revolution, which is very exciting for us.
Not to make it a marketing pitch, DFJ invests in US, China, India, Brazil, Russia, Israel, and Europe. All of the countries and continents where there's a lot of entrepreneurship. India perspective, kind of outside of demographics, I think the world is a global village. We do see right now, a lot of Indians, who have gone abroad and who have served global customers. So there is that kind of product marketing and product management knowledge, understanding of customer requirements. Same time, there has also been a lot of NRIs and other people who have come back. So there is that global experience, that we've got now to create kind of the next generation products and services. Also, India has kind of the advantage of learning from other markets. I mean, if you look at, just to take an example, in a US context, with Web 2.0, blogging, social media, microblogging, and then group buying. In an Indian context, you see all of those coming together at the same time. So clearly, I think there's a lot of learning by osmosis. the fact that macroeconomics are loaded in India's favor. If you simply look at mobile, I was just doing math on Apple's numbers. Apple shipped 40 million units. I mean, if you combine, your iPhone, iPad, iPod, all of them against worldwide PC shipments of 80 million. So Apple alone has got to 40 million. So kind of mobile is it, and it's very exciting in an Indian context. With 600 million mobile users, there are huge opportunities for funds as well as entrepreneurs and the limited partners to invest in these funds.
Right. I would say the whole dynamic of the total population that the Asian market has a great potential out here. If I would just quote a couple of stats from the global venture capital survey done by Deloitte. The survey very greatly brought out that the venture capitalists saw a great amount of expansion of ecosystem in India and China in the next 5 years. And 60 to 65% of the venture capitalists believe that valuations would increase. Now, what is the reason for that? I would say the confidence is because if you look at specifically India, there's great potential simply because the population is so huge and the penetration of internet is still at the tip of the iceberg. Similarly, if you look at the mobile penetration, mobile user base is really huge, but still we haven't been able to figure out what exactly can be done with that market. There have been few attempts in trying to figure out, and there are few successful attempts around that, but there's much more that can be done because we're sitting on close to about 600 odd million user base of mobile phone users, and ultimately this is always going to grow. So this entire thing, the entire media is going to change, the way people consume media. A traditional media is in a way in a state of flux right now. So if you look at this entire ecosystem expansion and you look at the potential of the population which hasn't been penetrated yet, I see this entire region to be a very lucrative opportunity for the venture capitalists and the future venture capitalists who are going to enter India.
So these are some pretty interesting things. I know from my own experience, meeting companies that have 50,000, 100,000, 2 million customers on a product that you don't see that in many sort of Western areas. So that's something I think's been pretty interesting, and I'm very interested in the 511 where that's really showing what's going on. So that's sort of the good opportunity. What are some of the challenges, and then what are some of the things that maybe the audience should think about? If they were to approach you because they have something that fits this opportunity. Let's start from that and work down.
Right. So just to give you a background about not making this a sales pitch at all, I can't do any sales pitch on this bit. But Gemini New Media Ventures is an incubation firm. Now, what do? We basically help the total ecosystem where I see a certain level of gaps in the market. Wherein at one level we have typical venture capitalists sitting with tons of money. At the other end we have startups who require seed capital or would require angel funding. And there's a huge gap between that. And I guess there lies the challenge. The biggest challenge is that the angel funding has become very slow and become very complex. And the gap between that 50,000 to a 3 million fund, which is required, is very much the need of the hour. And that will change the way people can invest in a startup, take it to the next level, and make sure that they are successful. So that's one challenge, I guess, to get your immediate money. The angel funding is basically required. The other challenge that I see in this market is people are not, the startups typically are not product focused. They're more on getting in the funding and spending on marketing, getting the acquisition on board, while product innovation is very much at the hindsight. So I guess that is, again, one thing that is required and a challenge in the market that can be looked upon from the startup side. While from the venture capitalist fund side, I guess angel funding and more incubation firms and making the environment more incubative is what I would say.
Yeah, so my learnings from the last 3 years, and I'm sure I'll learn a lot more in the next 3 to 5 years. I think entrepreneurship is awfully hard. I mean, in an Indian context, recruiting the right kind of talent I mean, if your idea, has certain critical success factors, you need to surround yourself with, a good team. And recruiting that kind of team is not all that easy. We're just beginning to see a lot of good case studies, exits of startups, that have created a lot of value for, entrepreneurs. So today, when the country is growing at 10%, I mean, you have, I was visiting the other day, offices of one of the large internet companies. They flew a chef from US who came here, spent 2 months to recruit a local chef, to cook food, for their company, right? So that's who you're competing against, for talent. So as an entrepreneur, you really need to do a good job because, being productive in an Indian context, having, work environment that matches a Microsoft or a Google kind of a work environment, uninterrupted power, bandwidth availability, getting in, getting out, is not all that easy. And things are improving, but it's not all that easy. The second, so talent is a big issue. The third thing is that when markets don't grow very fast, the big boys can catch up. I mean, easily, right? So if you have kind of a lot of warm-up time, if a particular market is going to grow in 3-4 years, then others can wake up. The gorillas or the giants can wake up and then start slowly, capturing your market share as well. And there are not many billion-dollar markets. There are many $100 million markets, and so there are not many billion-dollar markets. And the exits, if you look at, if your exit is a local exit, if it's the local acquirer, often it gets very difficult to get high valuations. So you have to be very clear that, if you are going after a local opportunity, you need to build a company that can IPO eventually, or you are on the strategic roadmap of an overseas buyer to kind of capture the right valuation.
If the question is how do you raise money and what factors go into it, I think a very simple answer, at least from my perspective, is get me excited. Get me excited in one of multiple ways. Either get me excited about the product or service that you're building, or get me excited about the revenues that you're generating, or get me excited about the team that you have put together. But give me something that I can get excited by. Without that, it doesn't matter, right? Then it's, you get into these debates of is this going to work, is this not going to work, and that funding process can drag on. So I think, at least from my perspective, the one thing I would recommend is figure out your angle of getting people excited about what you're doing. And for different companies, different spaces, that factor is going to be different. But narrow down on that and play it up as your strength and get people excited. Once you get people excited, a lot of these other things will fall into place.
Yeah, maybe just to touch on the other aspect of your question of how to reach out to someone that might be an institutional investor that you might want to have invest in your company. I think just like reaching out to a customer, reaching out to investors, it's best to do it through an introduction. If you can get, the more credible the introduction, the better off you are. If that's not an easily available thing, I think using a LinkedIn request or something like that also is a good way. Someplace that you can show your credibility of your background and can show some details about your company in an easy to digest format. Those are usually the best ways to reach out, I think.